Hi and welcome back to my channel. Today I'm going to go over how I made this beautiful blue sea glass lampshade. The little shade is only 5 inches tall. It's really cute. So number one, I needed to tumble and foil a bunch of glass. Now I wanted the sea glass look because I wanted it to be frosted so the light wouldn't blare through it. Now there's 4 different things I'm going to show you, basic sea glass information. So number one is a natural sea glass. This is what you'd get from the ocean if you went out and got some sea glass. They're hard to find usually. They're all different shapes and they have kind of a pebbling of the salt and stones. This is sea glass that you would buy at a store called natural sea glass, but it's not really, it's just chipped up glass. Now you can tumble that in your small tumbler and make it look smoother. This is raw flat glass that you buy at a store, and you can even buy it already tumbled, but I tumble it more so it looks more like sea glass. So this is another picture of what the supposed real sea glass that you can buy at a store after I've already tumbled it. So you notice it's uneven, but it's pretty smooth. This is another version that you can buy at a store after I've already tumbled it. Some of these pieces are thicker than your normal flat glass. What I've done is I've combined both types of glass into my project. So no matter what kind of glass I'm using, I needed to foil it first. I used half the width of your normal 7/32 inch foil. And as usual, you need to press it down so that it's really sticking to your glass, because I'm not wrapping around the glass a lot, because that would take up a lot of the profile of the actual pieces of glass, and I wanted to be able to see as much glass as possible. So you really need to press them down well. Now I'm going to prepare the form, and I have a whole video on how to make your form. But for this one, I took a styrofoam ball and I put a piece of cardboard around the bottom to make it like straight down from the diameter. And I drew on top the rays so I can use that to line up my projects. Now this is what I have in other videos of, is how to mix your silicone, your liquid silicone that you can get in a tube, with Dawn soap and water, and you just kind of like blend it together till it makes like a clay kind of like a doughy clay consistency, and you can use that to put over your form. This actually is a clip from a video that I have on putting it over a balloon to make a larger shape. But it's the same theory. I took this, and actually for this project I used clear silicone, but the one I'm showing you is with white silicone. The nice thing about the clear silicone is you can draw on your form first, like I showed you, and you can use those rays maybe later on to help you stand out your project and keep it all straight. So the next step is to solder the glass shapes onto your form. So now you can see my form that I had, and what I did, that round circle at the top is a piece of copper 12 gauge wire that I shaped in a circle. And now I'm slowly going to be attaching random pieces of the foiled sea glass onto my styrofoam. And the reason I like to use a styrofoam is that I could use a pin. You can see that little yellow pin. So if I need to pin something on it, it'll actually go into the styrofoam and pin it nice and securely. The silicone is very handy because it's not going to melt the styrofoam, so I can work on top of this form. And having a circle like that is really nice. Having the globe shape is really nice because then you have a real uniform shape to work with. You're not just like working in the air or something. You have something you can really press against and keep it secure. Now you can see that I have two different types of gloves that I'm wearing. The one on my right hand, that bluish green one, that is a one that you'd use to clean like dishes and stuff. And I actually clipped off all the little fibers on it and turned it inside out to see if I could use that. And it's really nice and sturdy, but it doesn't cling to your hand enough. It's very cumbersome, and I ended up stopping using it because it just did not do what I want. The one that I'm using on my left hand, that kind of clearish one that you can see, is a great silicone glove. It helps prevent the heat from the solder hurting your hands. But the trouble with that glove is that it's not very sturdy. So where my fingernails are, I kind of put holes in it the first time I used it. So I do put finger cots, silicone finger cots over it at times to try to excuse me, to try to support the areas that that have been like gone through. You can see my thumbnail right there is gone right through the silicone, but you know, that's life. It still kind of helps, and I still haven't found the ideal gloves to use. But anyways, so I'm just picking up random pieces of my sea glass, and some of it is that really thick three-dimensional type of sea glass that I showed you, and some of it is the flatter sea glass. So I've even taken some of my scraps of flat glass that I work with. I always save them, and I tumble the flat glass into tumbled sea glass kind of looking glass that are kind of smoky. Now what I like about using this sea glass, or you know, whatever you want to call it, the tumbled glass, is that, as I said earlier, it's really nice because the glass, you know, you can still see through it with your lamp, but the light bulb that you use doesn't like go, "Hi, I'm a light bulb." You know, it just kind of glows more in the lamp when you're done, instead of like really being a sharp look. So I kind of like it. Sometimes I've actually frosted the inside of my lamps to get that look, so that it's not really harsh light. So this kind of prevents that harsh light. So I use little bits of solder, as you can see, little extra bits that I happen to have around. I use brand new pieces. That one that I'm using right there is my, I have a video on how I melted my scraps into a usable piece of wire, again, of solder wire. So that was, you know, just kind of an irregular round piece of solder. So I use that at times to try to fill in my my gaps. So sometimes, yeah, it's hard to find the perfect piece of sea glass to fill your gaps, but that's okay if it's not perfect. You can always fill that gap up. You can always just like pick up a different piece. I like to use, for this one, I wanted to use a variety of different blues. So I wanted to choose a piece of sea glass that was a little bit different blue tone than the ones surrounding it. And also, if I have a whole bunch of flat ones together, I wanted to now put a three-dimensional piece of sea glass. So I kind of wanted the eclectic variety look. So that must have been really close to the one on the bottom that you can't see very much. I had to flux it around. At least one side of each piece needed to have some flux on it in order for the solder to flow nicely. If I had some flux already on the solder that was just sitting on my table, I could just didn't have to flux it immediately maybe. But then if there was a gap, I usually would flux that area if to fill it. And you can see that I'm using this big huge hunk of used solder to kind of fill that area. So it's kind of fun to try to find the perfect piece. And you just keep going around and around. I usually like to go all the way around the circumference of the top of the lamp and then work down from there. Instead of like doing one huge group going down, I like to like keep going around and around and around so that it blends nicely together and you can't see where I started and where I stopped. Okay, now step 4 is solder wire around the whole outside perimeter. Now this is, I have a video on this. This is how to make the bottom of your project sturdy. So you need to do something to help hold it all together. So I'm starting a piece of wire right there. I'm probably using like 22 gauge wire here. You want to use a wire that is, of course, pure copper or pure brass, and you want to bend it around the whole bottom. I also wanted to fill gaps with solder or foil. So this is one of the things, you have these gaps, as you can see, between them, and sometimes they're just kind of big and you can't fill them with solder or with a piece of glass. So this time on the inside of the lamp, I put a piece of glass. You can see that yellow thing up in the corner. That is my fan. So I put a small piece of glass on top of the hole. And this is on the inside, so you're not going to see it. And this is just one way that you can fill a gap. So I have a small piece of glass, and I am just soldering it to whatever the edges and the seams of what's already there. And I'm using that piece of glass to make it so that it doesn't look like I have a hole anymore. So I'm using tweezers to hold it in place. I soldered it to one end, and now I'm going to be soldering it to the other parts of the lamp itself. And then any holes that are left, I will fill that in. Now, if you're trying to fill a hole with solder, don't add too much heat all at once, because it'll just like fall right through the hole. You're going to have to wait till it cools down a little bit and almost like drop the solder into the hole. And because you dropped it in the hole, it's still going to usually heat up enough to attach itself. But if it's not overly heating up the original solder, if it's not heating it up too much, it probably won't melt it all the way. So it'll just kind of melt some of the surrounding solder, and it will fill the gap. Now this is kind of a hit and miss thing that you have to do. Like you might have to turn the lamp over and then add some to the other side and then go back and forth. But so if there's gaps, you can go back and forth, and by kind of dropping a hunk of solder, it's almost like putting what people call cold solder. So it's kind of not really fluxy. It's just kind of see, now you can see there's an extra piece of solder there, and I'm kind of blending it in, but I'm not trying to heat up the whole area to blend it in, because if I do that, it's just going to fall right through again, and I'm not going to have, it's not going to fill the gap at all. I'm using little extra pieces of solder that I have sitting on the ground to fill it. I'm using scraps. You can see I'm holding a scrap with tweezers there on my left hand. And so you can do that. You can use brand new piece of solder. You can use your melt. That's a brand new piece of solder right there that I'm using. You can use whatever solder you have. Do not throw away your pieces of solder, because they're very handy to use for scraps. Now I'm using a piece of foil, so I'm peeling off a piece of foil right now, and I'm going to use that piece of foil to fill a gap. So this is another way you can fill a gap. So I'm taking a piece of copper foil, and I'm ripping off that little piece, and I'm just using my tweezers and kind of sticking it in the gap, shoving it with the tweezers. And you don't even have to have it perfectly placed, because what I'm going to do is I'm going to solder one end of this piece of foil to my project, and then I'm going to bend with tweezers and stuff the other side and get it to stick, because it's not really going to want to stick the first time, because you have lots of foil and stuff there. So the foils, I mean, flux, the foil's not going to want to stick to flux, okay, because the flux is kind of slimy. So yeah, you could clean the whole project and then do this, but I usually just do it as I go. So as you see, I put the foil down, and I'm doing another area as I go, and you can see at the top, you could see the wire that I went all around. So if you place your foil where you want it, and solder one side, and then kind of use your solder iron and tweezers and stuff, and kind of like now reshape the other side so it doesn't look like it's overhanging any areas, so it looks kind of natural. And you're going to want to turn it over and do the other side also, so that you fill in the gap on the other side, so it doesn't look like, oh, I just added a hunk of foil. You don't want that look. But the foil method is nice, because if there's a larger gap than you really want, you haven't wasted solder, you know, trying to fill it, and it can be blended and looks good when you're done. So that's really nice. So I really like using the foil method. If the hole is kind of small, I could use just a glob of solder, and I could also, instead of using foil, as I showed earlier, I could use a very small piece of glass, and foiled glass, of course, and use that and almost like add another layer of glass to the other side. Now this only really works for like a smoky sea glass lamp, because obviously if this was a completely transparent or translucent lamp, you wouldn't want to add a piece of glass on the inside, because then you would see that look when you were done. But you can get away with that with the sea glass tumbled glass, because you already have that not completely translucent areas. You already have it. It's translucent, but it's not as transparent or translucent as a non-tumbled glass. So in that way, you could have that extra layer, and it won't look weird when you're done. But the foil method works with anything, the foiling or filling with solder. Okay, now I'm going to solder the top hardware. So you need some kind of hardware at the top to attach your arch or whatever you're going to use for holding the lampshade to your light bulb. Okay. So with this particular lampshade, I did not buy a harp to attach it. This one has one of those very small chandelier type, I think they're called number 3 light bulb, screw light bulb base. So it's a very small, because as I said, it's a very small lampshade. So I bought an old lampshade from like Goodwill or something, and I took the old lampshade apart, and this is the metal top to it that I'm going to use in this project. Now the wire, that circle that I'm attaching it to right now, I had to wrap foil around the metal that was there, because the metal that came with this used lampshade was not compatible with my solder, so I couldn't just use that metal and solder my lampshade together. So what I did was I took the copper foil and wrapped that around the metal, and now I am meticulously going around and soldering it as well as I can all the way around on both the outside and the inside of my lampshade, and trying to make it as smooth as I can. But remember, this is not an overly smooth look anyway because of the unevenness of the sea glass itself. So I don't have to be, it doesn't have to be a perfectly smooth solder, but I did want to have it as secure as possible, because this piece of wire right here, or metal hardware that I'm adding, is actually what's going to be holding all the weight of my lampshade. And as you can imagine, if you use chunks of glass like this, your lampshade is not lightweight. So you need to solder it on very nicely and securely. Now, step 7 would be the patina. I wanted to not have that silver look. I wanted to have the copper look that you would get if you patinaed it with the bright Novacone copper patina. So I'm going to spray it on and then use a toothbrush to kind of blend it in. Now you want to use protective gloves and masks, because patina is really harmful stuff. As you can see, it's a very pretty color that you end up with. The reason I like the spray technique and then spread around more to get in all the little gaps and stuff is that there are so many different directions that you need to get the patina in, especially when you have an uneven surfaces like this. The spray works very nicely. And then after you've cleaned it and put some oil or wax on it, it looks very attractive. And this is my project when I'm done. I had a video on the base, and now I have a video on the top, and my little lamp is done, and it's really cute. It's not very big, as I said. It's probably around 15 inches tall total. It's a very small lamp, and it's adorable. And thank you for watching. Until next time, have fun creating. Bye-bye.